6 Deuce Brims have been there now for 2 generations around that park, and they see it as their own park. The fact that we've got 6 Deuce Brims sitting out there flying colors, anybody that's angry with that gang will come by and use that as an opportunity for shooting.
Today, we're going over to Harvard Park Brims. With more than a few daily members, numerous intense headlines that include assassinations, set-up murders, and even the murder of a cop, this gang is known as being one of the most deadly brands of them all. So they definitely have a story to tell. Yeah. All right. Welcome to Cali's Most Dangerous. Let's get into it.
We've got a lot of anger out there, and we can point the finger. But we've got kids that have grown up accustomed to this type of life, and now it's just coming to a head.
They can catch you, but they can't stop you. It only slows you down.
Danger rating of the Harvard Park Brims. Have you ever been to Harvard Park in the 90s? Better question. Have you ever been to Harvard Park as a Crip member in the 90s? If so, nigga, how'd you make it out alive? Did you sneak in and out, or was you loud? I only ask this question because during this era, and even recently, this gang was known as being completely with the action and ruthless when it came to how they move with their enemy. That's why the Harvard Park Brims are going to receive a danger rating of a 9.6 out of 10, based off of the gang's long history of terrorizing the streets of Los Angeles and beyond.
Verbal altercation that led up to this shooting, which left 1 man dead, and now the search is on for the person responsible. We'll go ahead and get into some video from overnight. This was from Harvard Park, and investigators were at the scene for hours. Now, what we know so far is that around 11:20 last night, that is when the LAPD responded to a radio call for an assault with a deadly weapon shooting. The LAPD tells us video evidence shows the victim walked by the suspect who was sitting in a vehicle. It appears the victim and suspect had some type of verbal altercation. The suspect got out of their vehicle, opened fire on the victim, and then fled the scene in the vehicle.
Establishing themselves in the 1960s and immediately getting into intense gang warfare with the Crips made this Brim gang move a lot more militant than others. And because of that, they quickly developed a reputation as being one of the most deadly gangs in the area. Yeah, these stories and headlines carry so much weight that a lot of their stories are still told to this day, including a crazy night that came with the death of a cop from a Harvard Park Brim member, Kirk and Moore, who allegedly went on a crazy killing spree in the 1980s.
There is a recklessness in today's gang wars that make even the prohibition battles of the 1920s pale by comparison. There were, in those days at least, and by the direction of crime bosses, some ground rules. Civilian deaths were to be avoided. You tried not to kill law enforcement officers. It is worse, of course, in some places than others. Among the worst of all is Los Angeles.
On the night of September 3rd of 1998, Officer Pratt and his partner, Officer Veronica DeLeo, were driving in the blue undercover Camaro and on a stakeout at the Lion Liquor Store in South Los Angeles, in the Rolling 60 Crips neighborhood, when they heard what they thought were 2 shotgun blasts. They then heard rapid gunfire and within 5 seconds saw a car's headlights. This same vehicle had been involved minutes earlier in a drive-by shooting, which left 3 people wounded. They radioed to their supervisor for permission to follow the car, and the chase began. The chase ended at the corner of Florence and Crenshaw, at the Chevron gas station across the street from the car wash on the northeast corner, where the 2 officers parked their car for cover. As Officer Pratt called for citywide backup and requested an airship, the 2 suspects in the car made an abrupt U-turn, coming back towards the officers and began to open fire at the cops. As bullets from the suspect's AR-15 assault rifle started to hit the car, Pratt returned fire, and as he fired his last round from his 9mm service weapon, he took a fatal round, dying instantly. The 2 suspects turned themselves in on October 27th of 1988, after they were profiled on a television program, America's Most Wanted.
This is America's Most Wanted, and I'm John Walsh. Tonight, we'll ask for your help with one of the Justice Department's top priority cases, and we'll re-examine a case with $1 million reward.
Raylene, who was 17 at the time of the incident, was the driver of the car that was involved in the shooting. She had no prior record and was under the age of 18 at the time of the crime, but she was still tried as an adult and convicted of first-degree murder of a peace officer. and the court sentenced her to 25 years to life in prison, with the possibility of parole in 12 years. The accused shooter, Kirkton Moore, a member of the Harvard Park Brims, who was 27 years old at the time of the incident, had previous arrests for robbery, ADW, drug sales, and battery on a police officer. And in fact, had just been released on parole, said that because Pratt was driving in an undercover vehicle and never identified himself as a police officer, Moore never knew he was firing upon LAPD officers. But still, Moore was eventually convicted of first-degree murder of a peace officer and received 2 life sentences without the possibility of parole. Definitely rest in peace to Officer Pratt. While just the thought of a cop rubs me in the wrong way, no innocent person deserves to have their life taken. This situation is just one of many that have added to the daily reputation of the Harvard Park Brims. They have more than a few other headlines that justify their rating. But before we can address them, it's essential that we address the Harvard Park Brims history. History of the Harvard Park Brims.
Roger, I just wanted to make sure we have the house secured and I'll make an entry.
Right now, this community is in a state of siege, too many guns on the street, and they have to be suppressed.
Put your head down, what are you looking at? Put your head down!
To hang out at Harvard Park, you couldn't be no Mark. It was a jungle up there long before these Bloods was known as Spark. The history of the Harvard Park Brims can be traced back to the 1960s, before the formation of the Bloods and the Crips. In terms of the activities of the Harvard Park Brims, they've been active since around 1969, the first active year of the traditional black gangs of Los Angeles. And they predate both the Bloods and the Crips. They were known as the LA Brims in its earliest inception, originally consisting of the 5'9" Brims, then the Block Brims, started by Terry Goodell, and after that came the 6 Deuce Brims, aka the Harvard Park Brims. With the original clique of this gang being the 6 Deuce Brims, founded on 62nd Street. And from the Harvard Park Brims Foundation, these niggas was known for having hit it. That's because when this gang was in its infancy, it contained a large majority of reckless, ruthless, and troubled youth who were known for their crazy activity. But believe it or not, this gang started as a group of friends just hanging out together. They often played basketball together, and it was common to see them in Harvard Park. However, back in these times, growing up in one of the most dangerous sections of South Central, almost every single one of those troubled teens were guaranteed to live a life of poverty, gangbanging, and crime. This small group of children eventually became a product of their environment, being forced to adapt to change. And that change came with the Brims. And from the jump, the Brims was always with the sin. Yeah, jackers and robbers, they had them all. And they need Joe in. Bars, nigga. Nah, seriously, this gang has always stood on their own. They're known for being one of the few gangs around before the formation of Stanley Tookie Rim's West Side Crips and Raymond Washington's East Side Crips. In fact, the LA Brims were one of the few independent gangs to operate with no affiliation to Bloods or Crips, along with the Denver Lanes and the Chain Gang, today known as the Avenue Pyrus. And each of these gangs are known to be ruthless when it came to their war with the Crips. But the Harvard Park Brims have a history of being really shiesty when it comes to interactions with Crips. Of course, it's the bloody gang wars they're known to engage in with them, but they're also known for a lot of setups around the city, including a big situation that played out in 2006.
Prisoner on the streets. I feel like I gotta watch my back or beware of somebody trying to take my money or pull a gun on me or something.
All those people that were killed last year, 387, half of them were innocent bystanders.
In April of 2006, Marquita Hemingway, Patrick Hemingway, Michael Taylor, and LaShane Ford lived in an apartment in Los Angeles. Marquita and Patrick were married. Taylor was Marquita's brother, and Ford was Taylor's girlfriend. Reginald Holmes lived with his wife Trisha in the same apartment. Holmes, he was a high-ranking member of the 6 Deuce Harvard Park Brims, known as Gunsmoke. Taylor was not in the gang, but he knew people from the Crips. Although most Bloods and Crips are enemies, Holmes was always respectful and cordial towards Patrick and Taylor, and would occasionally sell them marijuana and often get rides for them to pick up weed. And in the afternoon of April 21st, Holmes asked Taylor for a ride to go buy some marijuana. and Taylor agreed. The two left and later returned to the apartment complex. And later that evening, Holmes came back to the apartment when Patrick, Taylor, and Marquita were there. Holmes asked Taylor about getting a drug called ecstasy. So they left to get the drug and returned about 45 minutes later. About 30 minutes after Taylor returned, Holmes and Trisha came to the apartment and asked Taylor to get some more ecstasy. So Patrick and Taylor left to do so, while Holmes and Trisha remained in the apartment with Marquita. Patrick and Taylor returned about 30 minutes later. And sometime after 10 or 11, Holmes returned to the apartment. He asked for orange juice, saying it increases the potency of ecstasy. So Taylor and Patrick went to the store to buy some. When they returned about 10 minutes later, Holmes and Trisha were at the apartment. Holmes drank the orange juice while others smoked marijuana and played domino. And at some point, Holmes and Trisha left the apartment. Meanwhile, from 1 a.m. to around 6 a.m. on April 22nd, Marcus Nelson, then a 6 Deuce Brim member, was monitoring security cameras at a so-called trap house where the gang sold narcotics. And during that time, Trisha, she drove home to the trap house in her blue, boxed-out Scion. At the trap house, Holmes met with Michael Walton, a 6 Deuce Brim shot caller known as Murder Rock or M-Rock. While talking, Walton gave Holmes a Colt 45 and a .38 caliber firearm and told Tony Craig, who was known as Tiny M-Rock, to go with Holmes. So Craig, he took the .38 caliber firearm and left for Holmes. Fast forward to around 2:30 a.m. Holmes arrives at Marquita's apartment and knocks on the door. Holmes was wearing a gray sports jersey and sweating. He asked Taylor to take him to his hood because his homeboy was waiting for him. And Marquita asked Patrick to go with Taylor and Holmes. Taylor got on the phone with Ford. He told her that he and Patrick were going home to get some more marijuana. Patrick and Marquita on the silver Honda Civic, which they park on the street outside of their apartment complex. Through a window overlooking the street, Marquita watched Patrick get into the driver's seat of the Civic and Taylor get into the front passenger seat. Holmes got into the passenger seat just before the car drove away. Meanwhile, at approximately 3 a.m., Murray Howard was drinking beer and smoking crack cocaine on Gage Avenue near Western Avenue, across the street from a Primo's Burgers restaurant. He heard male voices talking, which drew his attention to the Primo's Burgers parking lot. And while watching the lot, he saw a light-colored compact car and a dark vehicle shaped like a box parked next to each other in the lot. The cars matched the photographs of Patrick's Civic and Trisha's Scion. A man got out of the passenger side of the Scion and into the rear passenger side of the Civic. And the driver of the Scion remained in the car. Howard then heard several gunshots and saw flashes of gunfire inside the Civic. He then seen two men exit the backseat of the Civic.
They're dealing dope, so they're fighting over that. They're fighting over territory. They're fighting over virtually anything. Whose graffiti goes on this wall? Whose neighborhood is that? Long-time wars that have been going on over things that people can't even remember anymore.
The smaller of the two, which was the man that had been in the Scion, got out of the passenger side and returned to the Scion, which then turned onto Gage Avenue and right again onto Western Avenue. The other larger man left the Civic from the rear driver's side of the car and ran towards 64th Street away from Howard's vantage point. And for that reason, Howard couldn't get a good view at him. Howard then walks to the car, sees the victims, and calls 911. He described the cars he saw as a beige or light brown compact and a black hardtop Jeep or minivan shaped like a box. And when shown pictures of Patrick's Civic and Trisha's Scion, he identified them as the cars he saw that morning. On top of that, a security camera located in the building across the street from Western Avenue and 64th Street recorded the whole incident. The video recording has a timestamp indicating the two cars arriving at Primo's Burger lot at around 2:59 p.m. After approximately 2 or 3 minutes, one vehicle leaves the parking lot on 64th Street. Soon afterwards, lights emanate from the remaining car. The car then appears to move forward and is obscured from the camera's view by the restaurant. After that, a car is then seen driving away from Primo's Burger on Gage Avenue, then turn right on Western Avenue. The paramedics found the Civic's back door open, the car in drive, and the engine still running. Patrick had been shot 3 times in the back of the head and the neck, and Taylor had been shot 7 times from beyond. And they were pronounced dead at the scene. Stifling evidence also indicated that the gun had been fired at close range. Bullet casements and fragments taken away from the scene indicated that the two guns used were a .38 caliber firearm and a .45 caliber firearm. And Patrick's wallet and credit cards and Taylor's jewelry and wallet were recovered from their bodies. So it definitely wasn't a robbery. According to Nelson, a couple hours after Holmes and Craig left the trap house with the guns they received from Walton, they returned and gave the guns back to him. Meanwhile, at around 7 a.m. that same morning, Marquita woke up to find Patrick missing. And one of Taylor's relatives called and told Ford that the Civic was at Primo's Burger. Marquita and Ford then went to that location, where they saw the Civic with Patrick's and Taylor's bodies inside. Ford approached Detective Robert Guzman and said, "Where's the third person? There were 3 people in this car. Why is there only 2 people dead?" She told the detective that Holmes was the third person. According to Teresa Cherry, a 6 Deuce Brim member, she met with Holmes on April 23rd, the day after the murders. Holmes told her that he had killed the 2 guys because he believed they were setting them up to be killed. He told Cherry that he was in the backseat of a car and the 2 guys were in the front seats. He arranged to have his wife follow them in their car. Holmes had a gun in him and told him to pull over. Then he shot him in the back of their heads and left in Trish's car. Holmes then gave Cherry a gun and asked her to watch his back. Cherry's statements were made in police interviews in February of 2007. But during the 2011 trial, Cherry denied that Holmes admitted to killing the victims and said that she lied when she implicated Holmes in the police interviews and at his preliminary hearing. Holmes, he was soon arrested. And after his arrest, Holmes told Detective Guzman that he last saw the victims when he opened up the apartment complex gate for them as they drove off to buy cigarettes. Also, at Holmes' preliminary hearing, a witness identified Holmes as one of the 2 men he saw leaving the Civic. He later identified Holmes in a 6-pack photographic lineup as one of the guys who came out of the car, and explained that he had not previously identified Holmes because of fear that Holmes would hurt him, and that he had identified the other smaller person in the photo lineup because he knew he could handle him. In the end, due to video evidence, witness statements, and statements from fellow gang members, a jury convicted Reginald Holmes Jr. of 2 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of being a felon in possession of a firearm, and the court sentenced him to a term of life in prison without the possibility of parole. Definitely rest in peace to Patrick and Taylor. While they didn't bang, just having an affiliation with the Crips was enough to cost them their lives. Look, I know most of the gang violence in Los Angeles peak was in the 1990s, but man, 2006 was a fucking year to be alive. Or shit, a fucking year of death for that matter. It was people from down there every gang being dropped this shit. And drugs was definitely a big factor. Nigga, them E-pills was busting back then. Shit, I was only in 8th grade. Don't ask me how I know. Just know I know. Anyways, let's take it back for a bit to understand why the Brims and the Crips have such a violent relationship with each other. From the very early days of the Crips, the LA Brims have always rejected joining the Crips, and because of that, they're one of the first gangs to have violent conflicts with the Crips, leading to the 1972 murder of Lil Country by a Crip member. This murder led to an all-out war that can still be felt to this day, especially when it comes to the Brims and the neighborhood Crips. But to fully understand what played out after Lil Country's death, and to get a better understanding on why the hatred between the Brims and neighborhood Crips runs so deep, we have to get into who the Harvard Park Brims are. Who are the Harvard Park Brims?
There are 70,000 gang members in Los Angeles County. Out of that, perhaps about 10,000 are hardcore. Hardcore means that they'll kill you as soon as look at you.
The hardcore gang member, he's a sociopath. He's an individual that you can't do anything with. He has no conscience.
There's several Brim gangs scattered throughout Los Angeles. Some are newer, and some have been around since basically the foundation of gangs. And the Harvard Park Brims are one of the oldest of them all. Nigga, I'm not joking. You can still see a lot of old niggas at the park, still banged out and all that. I don't know if that's an accomplishment or an embarrassment, but they still there. Gotta respect that, I think. Anyways, the Westside Harvard Park Brims are a long-standing African-American street gang founded in West Los Angeles during the 1960s. This gang had a dubious distinction of being the only blood territory that's surrounded by Crips on all 4 sides of their turf. It's the Rolling 60 neighborhood Crips to the west, the 6-7 neighborhood Crips to the south, the Rolling 50 neighborhood Crips to the north, and the 5-9 Hoover criminals to the east. The territory is bounded by Western Avenue in the west towards Hoover Street in the east, between Slauson Avenue in the north to 64th Street in the south. In addition, these guys gotta stand tall being surrounded by enemy gangs. So the cliques have to stand on business. Their cliques consist of the 5-9 Harvard Park Brims on 59th Street, the 6-1 Harvard Park Brims on 61st Street, the 6 Deuce Harvard Park Brims on 62nd Street, and the 6-4 Harvard Park Brims on 64th Street. But throughout the 1980s, they were primarily known as the 6 Deuce Harvard Park Brims. When it comes to numbers, today, they're around 300 to 400 members deep. In general, the Brims, they've never been that deep. But to make up for that, a lot of their members are militant, fearless, and are known for their violent activities, with the Harvard Park Brims being known as the most active of them all. And these guys have more than a few members and storylines that have been attached to the gang, including an insane situation that played out in the 90s, with the prominent Harvard Park Brim member Marcus Adams, and neighborhood Rolling 60 Crips. On September 7th of 1994, Louis Dyer was standing with drug addict Zanea Meeks on Western Avenue at 47th Street in Los Angeles, California, across the street from Ford's Liquor. The area was known as the Crips neighborhood, and Dyer was a member of the 46th Street neighborhood Crips. Dyer and Meeks saw Dalen Hicks, DeMar Armstrong, and Trayvon Boyd, members of the neighborhood Rolling 60 Crip gang who were allied with their gang, drive up in a Cadillac and park in front of the liquor store. Dyer and Meeks then walk over to the Cadillac, and Dyer begins to speak with Hicks about plots for the rest of the night before they went into the liquor store. And Hicks bought a beer and then returned to the Cadillac. Hicks got into the driver's side, Boyd was sitting in the front seat, and Armstrong, he was sitting in the back seat. But a couple other members walked up, so Dyer leaned out of the passenger side of the window and continued to speak with the other men. And while talking amongst themselves, Dyer and Meeks both noticed a young man walking towards them. Dyer recognized the man as Adams, whom he knew to be a Bloods member with the gang moniker Lil Sonny. Adams and Dyer knew each other when they were both held at the California Youth Authority juvenile facility as teenagers. Although Adams belonged to a Blood gang, he was not wearing colors associated with the Bloods, but colors that blended into the Crips neighborhood. So he immediately thought something was off about the situation. That's because during this time in 1994, a gang war was underway between the Bloods and the Crips, particularly the neighborhood Crips and the Brims. The 4-6 neighborhood Crips, along with the neighborhood Rolling 60 Crips, were mortal enemies of the 6 Deuce Brims, which was Adams' gang. Anyways, before Dyer could fully grasp what was about to play out, Adams pulled out a gun and shot at Dyer multiple times. During the firing, Dyer ducked, crawled in front of the car, then stood up and ran down the street, while Adams fires a number of shots into the Cadillac at close range.
When they kill someone, they display a really remarkable lack of care or concern about that. Just no big thing. They laugh and joke and what the hell. Life's, the old saying, life's cheap. And life is cheap. I'll tell you, it's very cheap. It's damn near free, in some parts of the city.
Hicks, he suffered a fatal gunshot wound to his head at the right side of the temple area, and a non-fatal gunshot wound in his upper arm. The wounds were consistent with Hicks having raised his arms up in a defensive position at the right side of his head. Boyd suffered gunshot wounds to his chest, the right finger of his left hand, and his right forearm. One of the bullets that entered his chest fatally damaged his liver and his heart. Armstrong, he was also shot in the arm and the chest. The bullet that entered his chest fatally damaged his heart, liver, and lungs. When Adams was finally finished shooting, he walked back towards the alley, got into a red 4-door car, and drove down 47th Street. Hicks, he died in the Cadillac, but Boyd, he managed to exit the Cadillac and run into the Ford's liquor store before he collapsed. And Meeks followed Boyd into the store and saw he had been shot. He ran back across the street to a payphone, dialed 911, and reported the shootings. Lisa Mallard, who was in a liquor store with the owner, an employee, and another individual tried to calm Boyd. Marler told him that the paramedics were coming. But unfortunately, Boyd passed out and he died. Meanwhile, Armstrong exited the Cadillac but collapsed near 47th Street and Western. And ultimately, Armstrong also died at the hospital. When Dyer returned to the scene, he saw Hicks' body still in the driver's seat with blood everywhere. He saw the police and the paramedics arrive, but he didn't talk to him. Dyer felt he shouldn't say anything because a gang member would be labeled a snitch if he spoke with police about a gang-related crime, even if the crime was committed by a rival gang against members of his own. Dyer feared that if he told police what he knew about the shooting, others would try to harm him, so he didn't want to get involved. Instead, Dyer went to a nearby payphone and called Hicks' uncle, Gregory Sharoff. He told Sharoff that Hicks had been shot and that Moore was the shooter. On the day of the homicides, police officers took Meeks to the police station for an interview. Meeks did not give Dyer's name to the police because she wanted to protect his identity. And although Meeks had recognized Adams as a shooter, she did not identify him to the police because she was frightened and did not want to get involved. Instead, she told the police that she was unable to identify the shooter, claiming that she was high and on psychiatric medicine. Still, police spoke with Meeks several times and showed her a set of photographs of the possible suspects. But Meeks didn't identify anyone because of concerns of her own and her family's safety. In fact, at trial, she explained that a member of her family had received a telephone call that Meeks understood as a warning to keep quiet. A week after the shootings, the police contacted Dyer, but he gave them no information. He claimed he was inside the liquor store when the shots were fired. The next day, after receiving information from Sharoff that Dyer was a witness to the shooting, the police asked Dyer to come to the station. And when Dyer arrived, Sharoff's sister, and Boyd's mother were there. Dyer, he was initially reluctant to talk to the police, but changed his mind after the family members convinced him that he should tell the police what he knew about the killings of his friends. So Dyer told the police what happened and gave a written statement identifying Adams as the shooter in the photographic lineup. And soon after, Adams was taken into custody in early October of 1994 and interviewed as a suspect regarding the murders. And while interviewing, Adams told the detectives that he knew about the killings on Western Avenue. He said the shooter put on a blue shirt to make the victims think he was a Crip member. He walked up to the car and dumped on it, using a 9mm handgun and fled in the red car. Adams, however, denied being present, denied committing the shootings, and refused to disclose the name of the perpetrator. He stated that the shooter knew the Crips gang members who had witnessed the shooting because they had been in jail together, but Adams denied knowing the witness himself. Adams told the detective that his family fell apart after the Rolling 60s gang members killed his brother, and he blamed the 60s for what happened to his family. He told the detectives that he was not admitting to the murders, but if he had done them, the reason would be the killing of his brother. Meanwhile, Dyer was subsequently arrested in a parole violation and taken to the county jail. And Adams, he was in that same jail at the time. When Dyers was asked to view a live lineup that included Adams, Dyers did not identify Adams as a shooter because he was afraid what could happen to him in jail if he was labeled as a snitch. And sometime later, Dyer was brought to an office where Adams was waiting. Adams told Dyer not to say anything and showed him a copy of a statement Dyer had made to the police identifying Adams as a shooter. Adams told Dyers that the sheriff's deputies who escorted him to the office was Adams' cousin, and that Adams could have Dyer moved to a safe facility as long as Dyers didn't identify him. Adams then told Dyer that he had given him a pass, meaning that he could have shot him when he shot the others, but chose not to. So Dyer assured Adams that he had not picked him out of the lineup and he did not intend to do so. In that trial, Dyer testified that he decided not to testify or cooperate with police. Dyer testified that he was concerned that if his statement to police had gotten around in jail, he could be hurt or killed. He said that he received threats before and after the lineup. When a defense investigator subsequently came to interview him at the CYA facility where Dyer was transferred, Dyer lied and said he had been in a liquor store at the time of the shooting. He told the investigator that he did not see anything and claimed the victim's family pressured him to making his statements to the police. Meeks continued to be uncooperative with the police as well. And about a year later, in 1995, the case against Adams was dismissed and he was released. And for a couple years, it seems as though Adams had gotten away with the murder of the 3 individuals. But in 1998, investigators from the Santa Barbara County's District Attorney's Office contacted Dyer, who had been released from custody a couple years earlier. The investigators asked about the 1994 murder, and because Dyer was trying to reform his life, he decided to cooperate with him and testify against Adams. He told the investigators about being threatened and his jailhouse conversation with Adams. And later, when Dyer was contacted by the Los Angeles police detectives and asked to attend a live lineup in 1999, Dyer identified Adams as the shooter of his 3 friends. On top of that, gang member Kay Johnson testified at Adams' trial that up until 2000, he belonged to the Van Gangsters, a Brim gang that was best friends with Adams' gang, the 6 Deuce Brims. Johnson testified that he decided to tell the police what he knew about the shooting because he had become disgusted with the gang lifestyle and became friends with the brother of one of the 3 victims. Johnson recalled being with Adams in 1994 when Adams received an upsetting phone call. Adams told Johnson that one of Moore's homies had just been killed by a Crip member. A few days later, Adams came in with a news article. He said, "It's what I do for the homie," and threw the newspaper on the floor for everybody to run and look at it. Johnson saw that it was an article about the killings of the 3 Rolling 60 Crip members. Some of the older Crip gang members who were present asked Adams what happened. So Adams responded, "I ran up on him, and with 5 shots, domed him." Meaning, he shot all 3 of the men in the head. Also, mentioning that he had made sure they were Crip members by throwing up their neighborhood sign at them and having them throw it back at him. Johnson testified that using only 5 shots and shooting a person in the head would garner more status for a gang member. He also testified that a gang member would not take credit for a killing that he didn't commit, because if he did, he would be disciplined and kicked out of the neighborhood. According to Johnson, if Adams bragged about killing someone, he must have done it. He also mentioned that a few months after the killings, Johnson met Adams on the county jail bus while going to court. Johnson asked Adams who had identified him as a shooter, and Adams responded it was a person who he had given a pass and allowed to run away based on their prior custody together in CYA. Adams also added that he should have killed him too. Adams subsequently heard Adams tell other gang members that he was going to beat this, get out of jail, and kill some more of their members. On top of all that, Christopher Fennell, who was a member of the 6 Deuce Brims up until 1995, knew Adams for a number of years as a member of the same gang. Fennell testified that sometime in 1995, Adams came to Fennell's house because he wanted to buy a gun. As they were talking, Adams brought up the subject of the 3 Rolling 60 Crip members who killed the previous year. Adams then told Fennell that he had seen a Cadillac parked with 3 Crip gang members inside and 1 standing outside. And as he walked up to the car, the man by the passenger saw him and took off running. Adams then said he fired shots at the fleeing men and then shot everyone in the car. Investigators also found that about a month after the murders, Adams shot a security guard patrolling the parking lot of a credit union before he fled the scene with his 2 companions. Ultimately, due to witness statements, gang member statements, ballistics evidence, and a thorough investigation, the court charged and convicted Adams of 3 counts of murder, and he was sentenced to a verdict of death. Here's an alleged plot twist I found online though. It's alleged that he killed those 3 members because they f***ed his 13-year-old goddaughter and left her for dead. With the Reddit user commenting, the prosecutors never mentioned that in court because they wanted to make this about gangs. But ultimately, what do you guys think? Based off of that alleged situation with his goddaughter, was he in it right or wrong? If you ask me, you touch my family, you should be okay with the fact that you could possibly die. Because I'm coming back and I'm killing shit. Now, if he did it over some cold-blood gangbanging shit, that's just some foul shit. But if it was over his goddaughter, what can you say? Anyways, that one was definitely intense. But what's crazy about the story just told is that that's just one example of the Harvard Park Brims' ruthless means of operation when it comes to their enemies. Rivals and allies of the Harvard Park Brims. The Harvard Park Brims are a gang surrounded by nothing but enemies, but they have allies throughout Los Angeles and Southern California. For example, they have close ties to all other Brim gangs in Los Angeles, like the Venice Gangsta Brims and the Fruittown Brims. And they have close ties to Brim gangs in San Diego. On top of that, it's alleged, don't get on me because of this. This is just what I found. They also formed an alliance with the 5'9" Hoover criminal gang due to their common hatred towards the neighborhood Crips, especially the neighborhood Rolling 50 Crips. As far as I knew, they never got along, but y'all let me know in the comments if this is true or not. Do the Hoovers and the Brims now get along or have a neutral standing towards each other, or is it still war? Anyways, they're also cool with the Denver Lane Bloods, and they're also friendly towards the A-Trade Gangsta Crips. In addition to all that, members have also been traditionally friendly towards the Philadelphia 13s as well. But aside from those allied gangs, that's pretty much it when it comes to the allies of the Harvard Park Brims. But the list of enemies is much longer. It's widely known that the Harvard Park Brims have been a major force in Los Angeles since the 1980s, putting fear into the face of many and also making a lot of enemies along the way. The Harvard Park Brims go to war with all members of the neighborhood Crip car, including the Rolling 60 Crips, the Rolling 50 Crips, the Rolling 40 Crips, the East Coast Crips, and, while they're not officially members, the Harlem Rolling 30 Crips. And while the war with the 30s isn't as intense as it used to be, they're still known for their recent headlines against each other, including the shootout occurring in 2017. On January 11th of 2017, Brandon Tatum was fatally shot near Harvard Park in South Los Angeles, within the territory of the 6 Deuce Harvard Park Brim. And due to surveillance evidence, Samaje Dewan Smith was identified and soon arrested. During Smith's trial, he admitted that he was a member of the Harlem Rolling 30 Crips. And during a recorded police interview, Smith claimed that while he was walking towards Harvard Park on the day of Tatum's murder, Tatum banged on him using blood lingo and pulled out a gun on him. Smith claimed he ran away, but later admitted to shooting Tatum in self-defense. But the interviewing officer testified that surveillance video of the shooting, which was played for the jury, contradicted Smith's self-defense claim. Anyways, other rivals include the neighborhood Rolling 90 Crips, the West Boulevard Crips, the 6'5" Menlo Crips, the 6-pack East Coast Crips, the 4'6" neighborhood Crips, the 4'8" neighborhood Crips, the 6'7" neighborhood Crips, the Schoolyard Crips, and the Hispanic street gang, 18th Street. And the Brims have more than a few prominent members who put fear in the face of a lot of their enemies. Prominent figures from the set. The Harvard Park Brims have a long list of enemies who have made them one of the most feared, respected, and known Brim gangs of them all. But doing my research, I found a long list of members who are no longer with us. A few of them include OG Herbert Cole, OG Dottie Hayward, OG Michael Harris, Big Country, Frederick Garrett, who was also known as Lil Country, who was killed at the young age of 17 when he attended a party when he was murdered by Crips. Lil Country was the first Brim ever murdered by a Crip. In addition, his casket was vandalized by the Crips during his wake before his funeral. So it's highly rumored that his death, which sparked an all-out war between the Brims and the Crips, marks the source of the hatred between the neighborhood Crips and the Brims. Other members who are no longer with us include Casey, Eddie Watts, Firebug, General Lee, Kenneth Elliott Darden, also known as OG Ken Dog, who was fatally shot in his parked car near Harvard Park Recreational Center on 67th Street and Harvard Boulevard. There's also OG Pee-wee, Poncho, Pumpkin, Wicked, Wink, Q-Tip, Rashad Booker, Tyron, and Brazen. Definitely rest in peace to them. Y'all let me know in the comments if any other members no longer with us. Let their lives live on. In addition, there's also a few members who put in a lot of groundwork for the game. Some of them include Gunsmoke, Big Country, Moose, Lil Man, B.O., and Eddie Watt. Y'all let me know in the comments if any of the prominent members though. Also, they have a few rappers who have made a lot of noise for the game. Some of them include Tiny Wrench, Kane BWA, Tiny E, Harvard Park Louie, and Baby Meech. And all of them definitely have their own unique flow. But my top two are definitely gonna be Harvard Park Louie and Baby Meech. Y'all check them out ASAP to get an idea of what I'm talking about. Current state of the Harvard Park Brims. Been around since the 1960s, the Harvard Park Brims are one of the longest standing African-American street gangs in Los Angeles. And at this point, you guys seen the headlines, heard some crazy ass stories, and found out about some insane prominent members. The Harvard Park Brims are not a gang you want to play with. On top of that, this gang has grown and are thriving to the points where they're in other states as well, making crazy headlines in each of those states too. A few of the states include Alabama, Florida, Atlanta, New York, New Jersey, North Carolina, and South Carolina. But y'all let me know in the comments if I'm naming out your state, man. Rep your state, rep your state. Anyways, that's it for the Harvard Park Brims. You got any crazy stories about these guys? Any close calls? Did I miss something? Did I get something wrong? Y'all let me know in the comments. Let's have a conversation about it. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're part of the Danger Gang. Y'all stay safe or dangerous out there.